Ein redaktioneller Hinweis: Dieses Gespräch wurde geführt, bevor Russland die Ukraine angegriffen hat.
Erstklassisch mit Mischke, der musikalische Podcast des Hamburger Abendblatts.
Schönen guten Tag zu einer neuen Folge von Erstklassisch mit Mischke. Wir haben Spätsommer. Ich bin in Hamburg. Mein Gast ist jetzt relativ weit weg in Kanada. Ich glaube 5 bis 6 Zeitzonen an der Ostküste in Nova Scotia, irgendwo bei Halifax. Es ist eine Sopranistin, aber es ist nicht irgendeine Sopranistin, sondern Barbara Hannigan, die kanadische Sopranistin, die man hier in Hamburg kennt, spätestens seit der Lulu an der Staatsoper, aber auch ansonsten durch Konzerte in der Elbphilharmonie und durch das, was sie weltweit gemacht hat. So thanks very much for being here, Barbara Hannigan. It's a pleasure having you, and I'm looking forward to this talk.
Me too. I'm happy to speak with you again.
Okay. We've met a few years ago at Staatsoper because of Lulu you did there. But a lot has happened in between, and since you don't know what we're doing here regularly, we always start with either a simple question or a complicated one, and you can pick what you want first.
Complicated.
Complicated, I hope so. You're not only singing, but you're also conducting. Why don't you use a baton? Is it too male, too dominant, or is it just unnecessary for you?
Well, I do occasionally use a baton. I did use a baton when I conducted the Riggs Progress. It was more clear for the orchestra. It was easier on my shoulder because it's a 3.5-hour opera. And the singers were only seeing me on monitor. So just seeing the little white stick made it easier. But it's quite rare that I will use a baton. I tried it for a while. And it's a personal choice. I feel more like myself without any accessories. You know, I feel more natural. And I feel that I don't want anything between me and the orchestra. I don't want props. And that's probably, some people would say, how dare you call a baton a prop? But really, I feel that if they can follow me, if they understand what I'm doing, then I want it literally just to be in the hands and in the physical expression of the body in the most natural form. So, that's why. I've my hands, my wrists, my arms are super expressive, and I have a lot of detail also in the right hand, which would be the hand that's normally holding the baton. And I don't want to be limited by having to hold on to that thing and miss, tiny cues that I can give with with every single aspect of my instrument, which is my body, my breath.
Mm-hmm. I was so hoping that you'd say it's too dominant. I want to be part of the team, and this takes me apart and away from being part of the team, because then I'm actually looking like the leader or the guy.
Yeah. Well, I think one can be collaborative with or without a baton. So I suppose you may get some of the answer that you were hoping for, because I am a very collaborative kind of person, and I always have been. And I'm absolutely fascinated by the dynamics of a group and by the dynamics of leadership, because I think within the classical music world, we have, of course, the conductor does take on a lot of leadership responsibilities within the orchestra, within rehearsals and performance, but we also have leaders within the orchestra. And those people also have to take on their responsibility. And it's, if you look at someone like Claudio Abbado, who was, a lot of his time was spent making sure everybody knew who to pay attention to. So it was more, he was pointing out who's leading here. So that you're constantly tuning yourself to, you're focusing your attention on where you need to focus your attention. Whether that is principal oboe, or whether that's trumpet, or whether that's the first violins, or whether that may be the conductor, because it's a section where you really need a kind of a precise leadership at that place.
Okay, now you've earned yourself the simple question. Is there anything in the world for you that smells better than the stage a few minutes before your first performance there?
Well, I have to say, here I am sitting in Nova Scotia and I'm on the ocean. I'm on the Northumberland Strait on the north shore of Nova Scotia. And every time I arrive back in the Halifax airport, I can already smell that particular Nova Scotian air, which is a little bit salty because the province is a peninsula. So it's almost completely surrounded by water. And I have to say, I'm not sure if it's better, but it always moves me to arrive here and have that kind of sensation. It's as if everything turns into a maybe slightly more relaxed tuning in me.
Okay, so you're really a country girl then?
Oh, I'm totally a country girl. I grew up in the country. I moved to the city, which was Toronto, when I was 17, which was 2 hours away by airplane, to study at a performing arts high school, kind of like a FAME high school. But in the last few years, after living 20 years in Amsterdam and then 5 years in Paris, I've actually moved to the countryside in France, which is Finistère, which is the furthest northwest you can get. In fact, the closest to Canada that you can get from Europe. Same latitude, actually, because I realized that I really need to be in nature. That's where my soul needs to be when I'm not performing and rehearsing.
Mm-hmm. So you're singing and conducting. Is this twice the fun or twice as stressful?
It is fun. That's for sure. It's also fun just to sing. Like, I almost feel like I can kind of, I can let go of some of the responsibility when I'm just a singer. I can be more playful and a bit more like a kid. But as far as twice as stressful, I'm not sure. I think I kind of work with a high level of stress. I kind of like that. In everything I do, my centrifugal force is quick, and it always has been. And I work well under stress, and to a certain level, let's say. And the singing and conducting, it's actually, there aren't so many pieces that I sing and conduct at the same time. But if I take a piece like, for example, La Voix Humaine, which I started singing and conducting this past season, at the same time, it is really fun. It's fun for me. It's fun for the orchestra. It's exhilarating for all of us because we are in a kind of medium that we've created, together, because it's very particular to each group and to each orchestra that I do the piece with. And so I have to say, maybe a piece like that is twice the fun, even though it's quite a tragic piece. The rehearsals are really enjoyable.
But after such a performance, it's well known that you do both. And if you have the next appointment, you're going to perform somewhere just in brackets, singing and not conducting. How complicated is it to convince the next conductor standing beside you, in front of you, that you're no actual danger or threat for him because you know what he's doing and maybe even better than what he's doing. So you're not the singer then.
Yeah, that I'm not a threat. Well, I think the thing is, most of the conductors I work with now are people that I know, who are really my colleagues and who I've worked with for a long time, like Simon, or, I'm trying to think of who am I actually working with next season. What conductors am I working? I'm going to work with Gustavo Jimeno. I've never worked with Gustavo with the Toronto Symphony. So that'll be new, but I'm sure Gustavo won't be threatened by me. I'm really looking forward, and I know him. I know him, even though we haven't performed together before. And I have another concert next season with John Storgards. And John and I have this, he's also a violinist. And so we have this program called Dynamic Duo, where I conduct the first half and he's the soloist, and he conducts the second half and I'm the soloist. And this is super fun. I mean, we just have a ball, and it's, I wish I had more conductor friends who were still, soloists in their own right. And then we could do concerts together in the way that John and I do, because it's not that often that you get to hang out with another conductor for a whole week and talk shop and play. And yeah. So I don't think I would hope that nobody's threatened by me. I mean, the people that I work with, I'm very careful about who I work with and who I choose to work with. And I'm sure they are the same. And I'll also sing with Tony Pappano next season. And I adore Tony. And I think we have mutual admiration society for one another. So, yeah.
But you're sort of...
Yeah, I don't think there's any fear factor.
Okay. But nevertheless, you're sort of spoiled for regular sort of boring concert programs, just like the regular stuff, because you do all these special things, which are much more fun and much more interesting than just standing on the stage, doing your thing and going away again. That's boring, isn't it?
Well, it's probably not boring for some people. I think for some people, they probably really love doing that and like that they come in and do their thing and leave. I think for some people that is a sense of security and enjoyment. But for me, I've always been creating really special programs, and that's part of the fun for me, is to make programs that have a kind of dramaturgical line, to make connections that perhaps haven't been made before, to change aspects of performance, so that I may conduct the entire program, and then all of a sudden at the end of the program, I turn around and start singing. And it can be magical for all of us, I think, to realize that there is no one particular way that anything must be done, except perhaps baking.
Okay, but I know, and it's well known that your first performance was a Stravinsky piece in Paris, I think in 2010, something like that.
Yeah.
But how did you, you had to discover your inner conductor somewhat before. You had to be convinced of yourself that this might be a good idea, going on a stage, not singing, but conducting. It wasn't just a click of the moment, and in one moment you thought, I'm singing, and in the other one I think, I might be conducting as well.
Right.
So there has been a process before. There must have been a process before that, and the sort of thinking process about, is this the thing I should be trying? What was that like, and how did you start thinking about yourself as not only a singer but also being or becoming a conductor?
Yeah, it wasn't a spur of the moment decision to make the conducting debut in 2011 at the Châtelet in Paris. It came with a lot of thought and consideration. And, I work, as I said earlier, I like to work in collaboration. And one of the aspects of collaboration that I appreciate very much and that I'm happy for in myself is that I've always had a talent for finding mentors and for finding, my lodestars or my guides. And so over the years, I had some mentors who had suggested to me that conducting may be a path that I would want to pursue. They I would often be told, you sing like a conductor, or you might want to try this someday, or have you considered it? And finally, the opportunity came up to do this in Paris. Someone suggested it to me, René Bosque, who used to run the Présence Festival of Radio France. He had watched me for several years. He knew me as a singer, and he'd watched me on stage, and he said, you have this quality in you. And because he wasn't the first to say it, and because I agreed with him, I decided simply to take on that one engagement. I didn't think I'm going to become a conductor. I simply thought I will conduct a concert, which is a different thing. And it was important for me to make that distinction. In fact, I wouldn't even allow myself on a managerial website or anything to be referred to as a conductor for quite a few years after that. I thought, if I'm going to conduct occasionally here and there, the players of the orchestra must be asking for me. It cannot come from managers trying to market me or something like that. It has to come from the musicians, and it is on a one engagement at a time, one program at a time, and I will explore this. So prior to the actual debut itself, I had prepared with advice from conductor colleagues. I can't say that I'd had lessons, but I had some very good advice. And after that, about a year after that, I started to take lessons. And it was actually Simon Rattle who had suggested that I go study with Jorma Panula as a kind of preparation to then work with Simon himself. And that's how it more or less went. I also had some lessons with David Zinman, who was a wonderful person to bounce ideas off and to discuss music with and go through scores with. And I think any conductor will tell you the place you learn the most is on the podium. That's where you learn. And you learn all the time, and you constantly improve, and you constantly make mistakes, and it's different with every single orchestra. Even if it's a piece you've done many, many times, it's different with every orchestra because you're dealing with energy, and you're manipulating and galvanizing energy in a very positive sense. And
So how many concerts did it take for you to actually feel secure and be sure that this was the right thing, or this had been the right thing to do, and to change your posts?
I think I knew after the very first concert, I knew after the debut that I had made the right choice to explore this. Mm-hmm. I knew just before I went on stage for the debut that this was the right choice. I felt it. It was an absolutely clear gut feeling, intuition. So I knew that I would be exploring it further. And then I think over time, there might have been I think I had one engagement that I thought I never want to do this again, but it only happened once. And all the rest of the engagements over time were confirmation to me that I needed to keep pursuing this, keep learning, keep developing, keep searching. And, the last 4 years, I think conducting is much more than, I think it's 60-70% of my engagements are conducting. That's how it is now. And on those engagements, I may or may not sing. Some of them are purely conducting. Some of them I sing something. Some of them are 50-50, La Voix Humaine, where I'm really doing both at one time for the whole event. But I feel very much that it's my place now. It's really my place. And I felt like that, to a larger and larger percentage over the last 10 years. And okay. I think for many reasons, not just because I think I have a place on the podium, but I think it's also, there is a certain aspect of being in that leadership position, which has repercussions on a social, social level, and on a level as far as perceptions of what is a conductor and what is leadership.
Mm-hmm. But regular male and female conductors are often weighed and measured by how many Beethoven, Mahler, Shostakovich, Schubert, Bruckner cycles, whatever, the main stuff, by how many cycles they've been doing and how good they are in this mainstream repertoire. You don't seem to be one of the conductors too eager about doing Beethoven all over again and again, because you're doing quite different repertoire as far as I know. Or is this something that interests you at all?
Yeah, I don't really feel that my place needs to be, or I have no interest really in defining it by how much of the canon I have managed to put on my repertoire list. I approached Mahler 4 last year for the first time, and I will do it again this season and the following season, and with great joy. And that's been wonderful for me. But I don't think, now I want to do a Mahler cycle. No, mm-hmm. I want to keep exploring Mahler's 4th Symphony. And then probably I'd like to do Mahler's 1st Symphony would be the next one that I'd like to do. And as far as Haydn goes, Haydn's kind of my 200-year-old boyfriend. I absolutely adore his symphonies, and I try to program him on almost every concert that I'm doing. And I always have my own set of parts for each symphony now, and my own librarian with whom I prepare the parts. Every single player has my hand-marked parts. So I think I need to follow my heart and follow my passion. And like I said earlier, there really is no one way that is right, except what is right when one is following one's heart. As long as I'm not hurting anybody, then I think I owe it to myself and also to others to be true to myself. So the programming that I'm doing is absolutely what I'm fascinated by, what I'm interested in, what I feel that I, in collaboration with the musicians, can serve. And I think it has a place. I think people walk away from a concert feeling that there's something has been said here,
Mm-hmm. Is there anything that you found out as an absolute no-go to say to an orchestra unless you want to be blocked completely? I once talked to Alan Gilbert, and he said to me that the worst thing you could say to an orchestra is, "This was bad." Did you have any similar experience, or what's the secret weapon then?
Oh, well, maybe I've said that in rehearsal, but I was probably kidding. Or I said, or maybe if it was bad and I said, "Oh, that was bad," I probably was saying it about myself. And usually everybody would laugh, or some people would laugh. I use a lot of humor in rehearsals just because it's in my nature. And I enjoy it so much, Yeah, I suppose there are things you shouldn't say to an orchestra. One player said to me, "Never tell the orchestra that you're doing such and such a piece for the first time." When I did Mandarin, Bartok Miraculous Mandarin, I think the flute player, I was doing it for the first time, and the flute player, and I said that to the flute player, like, "Oh my God, I'm so nervous. I'm doing this for the first time." And he said, "Don't tell the orchestra." But I don't really have a do's and don'ts list, I guess. I'm basically focused on actually, there's one thing that I avoid, and that is the use of negative language, just because it's hard for the brain to process. The brain processes positive language. So if the orchestra is slowing down in a certain section, I won't say to them, "Don't slow down." I'll say, "Let's move forward here." Because as soon as you put a don't and then the thing, so don't slow down, the brain registers slow down. That's what the brain focuses on. So what I want them to do is move forward. So I only go into the positive use of language, but that's cognitive behavioral.
So your job isn't art, it's psychology.
Well, my job is a lot of things, but one of the things is absolutely psychology. I mean, every major conductor realizes to a certain extent how much, we are working with groups of people. We're working with 85 people, 85 energies. And if you don't have a knowledge of psychology, it becomes, and it's intimate. Making music is very personal, and everybody went into the business of music at a certain point because they actually loved it. So that's very, very precious. And if we don't acknowledge the emotional aspect of what we're doing, whether it's been suppressed or whether someone walks in and says, "Oh, this is just my job," I don't think any musician can say they felt like that forever, And deep down, I think there are moments when we are collectively, we have to conjure collective emotion. That's what music is, to a certain degree. It's emotion. Those little black dots on the page are nothing without emotion.
Did you ever come across a singer, male or female, in your performances where you had the feeling that this might be someone who should be conducting as well? Because that's quite a rare talent combination that you have. And did you ever sense something in somebody else and maybe give them the advice of, "This is a baton, this is an orchestra, maybe you should stand there and not down here"?
Yeah, I have. I've seen a few that I think, "Oh, you might want to explore this." Most recently, I was at the Ludwigsburger Schlossfestspiele And I was doing an orchestral concert with the orchestra, with the festival orchestra, but also chamber music. And I had brought four young singers with me, young professionals, to curate site-specific events. And one of them was a baritone named Douglas Williams, who's American, but he lives in Berlin. And he was doing a Buxtehude piece and a world premiere, which was for string quintet and organ. And so I gave him some pointers about how he may want to lead the rehearsals. And I watched his first rehearsal and I thought, yeah, this is in him. I knew it was in him anyway, because I'd seen him sing before. You can tell when you look at someone, you can kind of tell, have they got that? And is that worth developing? And so he really had it. And in the performance, in the rehearsals, he was really leading in a very conductorial way. And as a smart conductor does, you can do less and less and less until in the performance, it's only a series of signals that everybody knows what they mean. Mm-hmm. And it was very impressive.
Okay. And did you feel that you've become a better singing person because of your conducting, because of now you know better what it's like standing up there and having to obey to whatever's going on in front of you and having to conduct whatever's going on in front of you? Or did conducting not influence your singing qualities or your singing character or how you perceive yourself as a singer? Is it just two sides of the same medal, or did anything actual change in you being a singer that's now conducting as well?
I think I've become a better singer since I started conducting. I think it may or may not have happened naturally simply because of experience and aging, but certainly the depth of study that I've been doing as a conductor and the understanding, studying scores so deeply, you can't help but get deeper inside the music. So I think as a singer, it's given me also more understanding of the big picture of how all the sounds come to sound is different. I think I have more empathy for all the different duties of everyone that have to come together on and off stage. I think I've also understood more the pressure that's on a conductor in the leadership position. And so when I come across conductors who really are really great leaders, chapeau to them, because I know how much work it is, and I didn't realize that before.
Do you see?
I didn't realize everything that goes into it.
Okay. Do you see yourself ever taking a regular post as the leader of an orchestra, just staying with one orchestra, or is the idea of going from place to place, doing whatever you like, whenever it's possible, and how often, as often as possible, is much more preferable than tying yourself to an orchestra and to an obligation?
Well, I think there's a middle way, which is where I am at this point, because I don't like first dates over and over and over again. That's not really interesting to me, to go to a new orchestra and then another new orchestra and then another new orchestra. It's exciting, but it's tiring because it's a different kind of energy and adrenaline. I just had a first date with Copenhagen Philharmonic as conductor. I'd sung with them before. And that was amazing. That was in August. And the orchestra was unbelievably motivated. They were very well prepared. The willingness of everyone was extraordinary. It was just fun. And we got to a level that I think none of us thought we were going to get to. We lifted each other, which was great. That said, what I really love is returning to orchestras and developing relationships with them. So there are certain orchestras that with whom I have that. For example, Munich Philharmonic is 2 or 3 weeks every year. Gothenburg Symphony, I'm principal guest conductor, so that's 3 or 4 weeks a year. Radio France, I don't know what, I have a title there. I don't even know what it is, but anyway, I'm there 3 or 4 weeks a year with Radio France. Yeah. And then there are other orchestras that I return to every single year instead of every 2 or 3 years. And so like Danish Radio Symphony Orchestra, Toronto Symphony Orchestra, my Dutch orchestra, Ludwig. So I like to build relationships. As far as would I like a chief conductor position, which is 12 weeks a year, but I think a proper chief conductor position involves so much more because you're really working with the administrative leadership and planning of the orchestra to a high degree. So I think it is a very big commitment. I wouldn't say never. I don't have that in my sights at the moment. It's not something that's looming for me as a big interest at the moment. I prefer having several groups with whom I feel that we're developing trust and we're developing our particular language together. And we know that that's going to go on for the next years.
Thinking of 2 things I've seen you here. One was Girl Crazy, where you were singing Gershwin and conducting Gershwin at the same time. The other thing was the Lulu, where you were doing gymnastics, not only physical gymnastics, but vocal gymnastics as well. It's been amazing performance. But what about the stress that you always have to go the extra mile? I mean, most of your colleagues are very, very pleased with just having to be good at one thing. And you always are supposedly forced to do both and to be perfect at both and even at the same time sometimes. So you're always putting, I mean, you've just said that you like stress, but you're always putting an extra amount of stress into your life. You could have everything easier then, but that would be boring as well.
Well, I think the first thing I would address is the use of language, because you said that why am I forced to go, or that I'm putting, or the word stress. And for me, it's not, I don't feel those things. I actually, I strive for my own, to achieve my own potential. Mm-hmm. Like it's fun for me. So I don't feel under an obligation to do those things. I feel like, on the other hand, I could say you're totally right. I am forced because it's my nature that forces me to do that. And I do put that stress on myself, but I also embrace that, stress, because it's fun. Like I really, the viewers can't really see me, but you see me and you see like I'm smiling because it really is fun for me. When we did the Lulu and I did all those acrobatics, I went home once I knew that Marthaler wanted us to be a kind of itinerant acrobatic troupe in this production at Hamburg Staatsoper. I went home every day after rehearsal and I went on YouTube and I Googled, easy acrobatics for beginners. And I was like watching videos every night and developing, okay, what can I do? I guess I was about 45 then. And I was thinking, what of these things can my body actually do? And I knew the guy that was playing the athlete was Ivan Ludlow. I had worked with him before. I knew he was very strong. He used to be a competitive swimmer. He had shoulders like a kilometer wide. And so I would go to him every day, take him over to the corner and say, okay, look at this and let's try this. And I'm going to do a handstand now. I'm going to flip my legs up over you now. You grab me from here. And so that for me was really fun because I was developing ways of of stretching myself. And this autumn, I will sing Lulu, the very first production I did with Varlikovsky, in which I'm on point shoes.
Oh,
And, I'm 50 now, and I'm going back on point shoes after 9 years of not having been on point. So that's going to hurt. But I'm sure that it will also be fun. And I will be happy at the end of every day that my feet hurt and that I'm limping home or whatever, icing my toes or whatever it is that I will have to do this time around. And I mean, so it was never a question of something not being enough. I mean, I always come from a place of abundance. I'm always looking at what do I have, not what don't I have. Mm. So I never am looking from a place of lack. I'm always going from the place of abundance. And the conducting and singing, this is abundant. It's abundance as far as, this is a skill that exists in me, and it's something that I want to develop to my potential. It may or may not be inspiring others to achieve their own potential in how they're working. I believe that my role is not only to be of service to the music, but also to be of service to society as a musician and as a leader. I think that's important. I think it's important in our communities to want to be our best and to help encourage others to be at their best, whatever that may be, right? It doesn't have to be in music. It doesn't have to be in something that takes, $50,000 at a high-level university. It can also be in anything,
Another amazing thing that I came across was that you're going to be here in a few months in Hamburg to be part of a small John Zorn festival. And I thought, whoops, is this the same Barbara Hannigan that I've known? What are you going to do there? Is there anything clear yet? Or will you just be...
I know exactly what I'm doing.
Okay.
I'm singing because I've been working with John. I met John in 2015. And John Zorn, he's an unbelievable creative force. I mean, he's a player, he's a composer, he's an improviser, he's a leader, he's the captain of his own John Zorn army, really. And he's a person I consider a friend, but also a mentor. Absolutely. I mean, when I have to make big decisions and I need advice, I turn to him as one of the people on, let's say, on my private team who helps me make those big decisions. And so I took on a piece of his a few years ago called Jumalattaret, which is a piece for soprano and piano, and it's unbelievably difficult. If you look up like Barbara Hannigan, John Zorn, you'll see 2 New York Times articles. One article is only about how much I struggled with learning that piece. And then the other is the review of how it went in New York, which is great because it went really well. And I've been singing that piece since, I guess, 2017 or 18 at various festivals, classical or jazz or whatever, in California, in Portugal, in Holland, and in New York. I sang it at the Armory with this unbelievable pianist that works with John a lot named Steve Gosling. Mm-hmm. And now John has written another piece for me, which he wrote during the confinement, called Split the Lark. And he wrote it for Steve Gosling and I. Again, it's for soprano and piano with texts of Emily Dickinson. I also do a piece of John's called Pandora's Box, which is for soprano and string quartet, which I performed in New York for the first time 2 years ago. And that's with the Jack Quartet. And I've also improvised with John just a little bit on a concert at Beaux-Arts in Brussels, and I'd like to do that more. And I also recorded a piece of John's, which is it's called Song of Songs, or Shir Hashirim, which is for an ensemble of women's voices. I think 6 women's voices, or maybe 4, 6, I think, and 2 speakers. And I did that with my boyfriend Mathieu Amalric, who's an actor and filmmaker who is a really good friend of John's, who's made 3 films on John. And so Mathieu and I read that text while the singers are doing their part. And so we'll also do that in Hamburg. So I'm super excited. And I have my kind of John Zorn addiction and several projects every year in which I'm working with him. So I'll have the big event in Hamburg. I'll actually do some of his music in Antwerp just before that. I'll probably be with him in Italy in May, and a few other festivals I add. Like, I think I'll sing his music in Copenhagen next season and also in Spoleto Festival. So, I mean, it's great. This Yuma Laterit piece, it's extraordinary.
Okay.
It's out of this world.
I completely didn't know that, but my favorite John Zorn story is always that I've seen him at a jazz festival decades ago with a speed metal band called Napalm Death, and they played pieces about 6 seconds long, and whenever one piece was finished, he was giving them hell because something had been wrong, supposedly.
You're right.
He did this for 2 hours, and it was amazing.
Yeah.
And so much noise.
Yeah. But and John has that. I mean, he has this energy, and I can imagine him doing speed metal or whatever. I mean, and some of the improvisations are super aggressive or like just sound. But he also has this aspect which is totally lyrical in his music, and which is very vocal and gentle. And I mean, it's amazing because he's free. I mean, he avoids all major management. He has his own label. He hires his own musicians. He pays us. All my engagement with John Zorn are totally outside anything to do with any other management or any other kind of organization. It's just me and John. And yeah.
Christoph von Dohnanyi gave me a classic quote I always pick up whenever I talk to somebody who's conducting, and he said that conducting is not hard, making music is hard. Is that right?
That's a good way to put it. I mean, again, language-wise, I always translate it a bit because I don't think of it as making music is hard. I would probably, the actual physical aspect of conducting, if one needs to make something clear, there's any number of ways in which one can do that, which we can all figure it out, but it's true. It's that what we need to do is to serve the music. That's what we have to get to. And so it's like we say in Canada, if you can't see the wood for the trees, meaning if you get so caught up in the technical things and you forget the core of the music, you forget the big picture of the music, whatever the music is demanding, and one must stay in contact with that, and one must be disciplined enough to create a situation where their technique is serving the music as opposed to the music is in service of the technique. So I think that's what he means. And so I say, yes, I agree.
Okay.
Yeah.
Since you mentioned since you mentioned Canada, and if my archive is not wrong, one of your idols is supposed to be the Canadian pianist Glenn Gould, which is interesting and quite natural in one way, but on the other hand, he did not conduct and he did not sing, unless you count whatever he's been doing while performing or recording, if you count this as singing. So why is a pianist your idol as a singer and conductor?
Well, he was an authentic, creative person. So I think that's the most important thing. I think he was endlessly curious. He did conduct a little bit. There's a recording of him, I think, conducting Siegfried Idyll. But I don't think that was something he did very often. And he also made radio documentaries. I mean, he was a multi-talented, creative person. And I think for me, again, it's that strength of a person following their heart and doing what they need to do to fulfill their potential. And that was his. So he followed his heart to leave the performing stage because that was not allowing him to be at his best. and he knew he could be at his best in the studio. He was fascinated by Canada and by the landscape and by radio documentary. And he was giving lectures on, there's this lecture on YouTube of him talking about the Hindemith trumpet sonata or something. I remember when I was younger, I used to laugh at it, but actually it's pretty amazing. He just did that. And because it fascinated him. So he was true to himself. And, one may or may not like the way he played the piano. I don't always, if I listen to sometimes like for his recording of the Moonlight Sonata, it's like, what? And then on the other hand, okay, you know what? I'm happy to listen to that. I'm fascinated by why did he choose to play like that? So, and we all know the famous Bernstein collaborations with Glenn Gould, in which Bernstein, made an announcement about who's the boss, who's the boss, the soloist or the conductor. And it's a very interesting speech that Bernstein made before the concert. And I actually like that he made it because it helped create a lot of dialogue around that aspect of music performance. In a way, the composer is the boss, but then the performers have to take the music away from the composer and bring it to life. And then the performers somehow have to have some kind of homogeneous idea of how they're going to do it.
Mm. Is there anything left on your personal bucket list as a singer? Like, I don't know, some role, some concert piece, whatever? Or is your main idea just humor me, surprise me, and don't bore me and bring it on?
Yeah, I did have a lot of things on the bucket list. Some of them I crossed off because I didn't want to, like Sophie from Rosenkavalier had been on my bucket list. It was a role that I'd always wanted to do. I think the time has passed. I shouldn't be 50 years old singing Sophie on stage now. So I think that's not going to happen. Marie in La Fille du Régiment was also a part that I thought, that is so me. It's so funny. And I could sing it in my sleep and it would have been really fun. And I didn't take the chances on doing that. So I regret a little bit that those passed me by. There are some other pieces that I'm still waffling about doing. For example, Erwartung of Schoenberg, which probably I'd like to sing. Probably I'd like to do Pierre Lunaire at some point later. I think you can do that whenever. A piece that was on my bucket list was Samuel Barber, Knoxville, summer of 1915.
Wonderful piece.
Oh, amazing piece. Barber, what an incredible composer. And I was so fortunate that Simon Rattle and I, Simon programmed it with LSO this year. So we did it last season. I actually ended up conducting it and singing it because of some funny COVID thing. I was just supposed to sing it, but Simon and I'm sure we'll do it again in future when I'm just singing it. And so that's been very special. But I think, ideas come, like La Voix Humaine as a sing conduct, that came a few years ago to my mind, that this needs to happen like this. And I'm still developing that project. I've premiered it, but I have a few years ahead in which I'll continue to develop it further and perform it further. Maybe we'll bring it to Hamburg. That would be fun. And for the moment, I am happy, and I'm also happy to be surprised.
Mm-hmm. I have two questions left for the end of this talk. The first and quite easy one, or maybe complicated one, would be, if you should do this, how would you describe your voice to someone who hasn't heard you before?
My voice? It's funny, I'm not that attached to it. I use it for what I think. I use it in a way that I think it needs to be used for each particular piece. So I know that I have special qualities. I think it's a clean instrument. There's a certain purity to the instrument. I know that some of my colleagues describe it as a kind of like a strange bird they never heard before. I like that. But I think it's quite a flexible instrument. It's changeable. It can transform itself. But I don't know how I describe it. I guess it's a soprano.
But it's not like a violin without wood. It's more than that for you as an instrument.
Yeah, it's more than that. Yeah. I think of it, when I'm thinking about sound and creating sound, and when I'm in the zone of working, it has kind of aquatic elements to it, and textures, and it has colors like bluish, transparent, translucent, bluish, aqua. There are certain colors that I use a lot when I'm making sound. But I wouldn't say I wouldn't compare it to a particular instrument. I'd rather compare it to some kind of strange animal.
And I hope that you never have to make this decision, but if you should be forced to quit one or the other, what would be easier for you to stop singing or conducting?
Well, eventually, the voice isn't going to be able to, I won't be able to sing Lulu anymore, but I suppose I could keep singing. Nobody might want to pay to buy a ticket to hear me do that, but that doesn't mean I can't keep doing it. I can have my farewell tour in the privacy of my own home every single year, As far as conducting goes, I love that. And I probably can do that longer than I can sing. We've all seen 80 years old plus conductors on the podium. But, if something happened and I couldn't do one or both of those things, I would find something else to do that I would love doing. That's just my nature.
As long as it's creative. I don't see you selling trousers somewhere, but rather in pictures or selling books or writing books or whatever.
Yeah. Or, I love working with people. I'm sure I would find something that I would be passionate about and that would give me a reason to wake up every morning and get down to work. I'm a worker bee for sure. I love working. It's fun. It's really, I'm not the queen bee. I'm the worker bee for sure.
Oh, what a way to end. But yeah, we can't end better than this. And I'm keeping you from watching the fisher boats or seeing the lobsters picked out of the sea quite close to where you are right now.
Yeah.
And oh no, you don't. You really don't. You see this. Actually, you see this. You see the waves. You see the water. You see the.
Yeah. Look, I'll show you. Oh. You can see it. Can you see that? You can see it.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I can see this. Yeah. Thanks very much.
Yeah. And they literally come right into the boats. They go out that harbor and they come right back in.
Okay. Yeah. I'm satisfied now, and I have to cry if I see this. So thanks very much for talking, and I'm really looking forward to meeting you and hearing you here in Hamburg with all the John Zorn stuff you're going to do, and hopefully you do something else as well as soon as possible. And I wish you, I don't know what the Canadian saying is for good luck, but I guess it's just good luck.
I think it's good luck. Well, thank you so much. It was great to talk.
Thanks for having me, and bye.
Yeah, bye.
Weitere Podcasts vom Hamburger Abendblatt finden Sie auf abendblatt.de/podcast.